call to order the City Commission Board of Equalization for the City of Dickinson, Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. Let the record show that all commissioners are present. Does the clerk of court have a copy of the published meeting? Clerk has a copy. That copy shall become notice within the minutes. Mr. Hirschfeld, have you completed and assessed the complete roll for the City of Dickinson?
Mr. President, Commissioners, the assessing department has adjusted the values as per the directive of the board, and we have updated that roll.
Thank you, Mr. Hirschfeld. Will you please present us with the assessor's report?
Certainly. After the adjustment, our 2020 values, commercial values now stand at $1,089,351,944. Residential is now at $1,462,807,800 for a total true and full valuation of $2,552,159,744. That is up slightly from last year, which was $2,522,853,036. New construction for the year, we had 28 million, just over 28 million in commercial, 26 million for residential, or right at $54,500,000 worth of new construction. The taxable value for 2020 is $120,293,948. That is the figure that the mills will be calculated against. That's up slightly from 2019's $118,942,471. Our sales ratio, commercial is at 87.2%, residential is at 87.1%, and following the directive of the board, our adjusted ratio currently stands at 87% even for both commercial and residential. Mr. President, that is my report for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Hirschfeld. We'll move into item number 4. Item 4 is a tax abatement. Mr. Hirschfeld, do you want to present the tax abatement from Rohr's property?
Mr. President, Rohr's properties are abating their valuation for 2018 for several properties. There's 3 of their apartments in the Westridge subdivision, as well as their marketplace and several of the vacant lots. All of these properties were before us, and I think it was January or late December that we heard the 2017 abatement, and so they're here for the 2018. And we can start with that I had at the top of the list was the apartments. We have a slight difference from what the owner's request was. And our recommendation is to follow what the 2020 true and full value is, which is following what the State Board of Equalization did in 2019. And that is the recommendation we're moving forward with to the board this evening.
And that would be for those 3 apartments. The first one, 2507-0100-2600. Your recommendation is to stay at the $2,436,100, which is the board's, the state board's evaluation. The owner's request is $2,169,710. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, commissioners, as you read down, you can read through that. Any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld on his recommendation to stay with the State Board of Equalization? As per the board's power, we have 4 possible motions. We can make no change to the current and true valuation. We can change the value to match the 2020 valuation. We can change the value to the owner's request. Or we can change the value to some other amount.
Mr. President, I move we change the value to match the 2020 valuation.
Okay, so that would be the
gray area.
Yes, the gray valuation, which is the Board of Equalization's 2019 recommended amount. Mr. Hirschfeld, were they going to call in?
Mr. President, it was my intent that or it was my understanding it was their intent that they were going to participate this evening.
Okay, so I will.
There is no mailbox for that extension. To end this call, press 1.
Okay, try that again.
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
Okay, so they knew they were on at 6:05. It is now 6:06, so we'll give them a little bit of time. Mr. Hirschfeld, were they aware of your recommendation, what you were going to recommend?
Mr. President, Commissioners, I did send out these exact statements to them. Told them the intent was that staff was going to recommend the 2019 valuation, which is now the 2020 valuation. And notice that there were some differences. The lone exception would be the marketplace, which did not go before the state board, so there was a significant difference between what our recommendation is on that property versus what their request was. So
We'll give them some time. In case their clocks are a little bit different than ours. And the motion from Mr. Steiner is just for the apartments as we're discussing right now, so.
Yeah. Did you want to include both 2,600 and 2,700?
Yes, well, we should be able to do the three together, Mr.
Okay.
Blanco, right?
All of them then, yep.
That would be fine, Mr. President.
With a motion, cover all three of them.
Yep.
Mr. President, Commissioner, I just wanted to mention, we did do a summarization briefing. I should say that Assessor Birchfield has done summarization briefing, and because this is virtual, do you want the briefings read? I was going to, in the process, we were going to just read the briefings and then bring it so that Mr. Hirschfield could do his comments and then the Collins could do theirs. We didn't know how we would like to do
And
that
that's
for the
fine.
public.
I'm fine with that, if you have the briefings read.
Okay, it's just for the public's knowledge.
While we're waiting, Mr. Hirschfeld, do you want to read the briefing on the apartments?
Or I can.
Or you can, Mrs.
Yeah.
Carlson.
So the summarization briefing is the owner is Roars. This is an address is the multiple of the apartments. And the briefing statement is, Roars is abating the value of their apartments located within the Westridge subdivision. The State Board of Equalization decreased all of the parcels at the 2019 State Board of Equalization meeting in August. In April of 2020, the City Commission elected for those values to remain in effect another year. Ownership is looking for a value that falls in line with the 2019 State Board of Equalization valuation. Staff recommendation is assessing staff recommends following the gray column, which is the 2020 true and full value, and to be consistent that the 2018 value be changed to match the 2019 and 2020 values, which are very slightly from the ownership's request.
Thank you, Mrs. Carlson. Well, I'm going to leave it open because we're going to be moving through their properties. So might as well leave it open to anybody that wants to call in. So on this property anyway. So we have a motion by Mr. Steiner to approve the recommendation of the city assessor at a 2020 true and full value, which is the equal value of the 2019 true and full value of the State Board of Equalization. Do we have a second?
I would second that.
There we go.
Hello?
Hello? Hello. Can you state your name for the... Hello?
Yes, sorry, this is Kim Caliber.
Okay, well, we're not to you quite yet, Kim. Yep. All right. Any further discussion on this apartment complex? Okay. So we have a motion by Mr. Steiner and a second by Mr. Frederick. We'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner? Aye. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Waller?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We will move into the second item.
Mr. President, I'd like to move into the vacant lots,
Okay,
if you can, please, in case the Roars wanted to get online, knowing that these two are following the same things. And
we
with,
still have the marketplace also.
right. So with the vacant lots, the
Okay.
summarization briefing, if you want me to, I'll go
Yep,
ahead
go
and
ahead.
read.
Go ahead.
There is 16 vacant lots that are being presented. Roars is abating the value of these vacant lots located within the Westridge subdivision. The State Board of Equalization decreased all of the parcels at the 2019 State Board of Equalization meeting in August. In April of 2020, the City Commission elected for those values to remain in effect another year. Ownership is looking for a value that falls in line with the 2019 State Board of Equalization valuation. Staff recommendation, assessing staff recommends following the gray column for consistency that the 2018 value be changed to match the 2019 and 20 values, which are very slightly from the ownership's request due to different rounding techniques.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld on the vacant lots? I just see like $1,050 total rounding difference. Am I correct?
Mr. President, that is correct. Our system rounds to the nearest 100, so any of the 50s have been rounded up, and just some slight differences
Okay.
like that.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Hirschfeld or Mrs. Carlson? Not, I think we can cover all these lots with one motion. So I'd look for a motion.
Mr. President, move to approve.
You want to approve the values as
20
recommended by Mr. Hirschfeld?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Great. And we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner? Aye. Ms. Waller?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next item up, we'll go to the marketplace. Mr. Hirschfeld, Mrs. Carlson, and we'll read the briefing statement.
Thank you. Summarization briefing, the owner is the Roars. The address is 3275 West Ridge Drive. It's called as the Marketplace Commercial Strip Mall. Briefing statement, the market center was decreased significantly at the 2019 City BOE meeting, and that value was then applied to the 17 abatement and has also carried over to the 2020 value. The owner is asking for a value of $867,592, allocating $100,000 to the land and $767,592 to the improvements. The entire request calculates to approximately $4 per square foot, while they are asking for a land valuation of 48 cents per square foot. Staff recommendation is staff recommends changing the value to match 2020's valuation, which is the true and full market value for the subject improved site. Staff recognizes the owner's request is below the value of the vacant site despite being improved with recent land sales in subdivision surpassing the $5 per square foot. Proper appraisal practice dictates considering the highest and best use of the property, and in this instance, if the combined land and structure value falls below the value of the land, consideration should be given to raising the structure and returning the parcel to a vacant lot. And before you, there are possible 4 motions.
Right. We have those 4 motions. We can make no change to the 2018 valuation, change the value to match the 2020 valuation, change the value to owner request of $867,592, or change the value to some other amount. Recommendation from staff is that we change to the 2019 true and full value of $3,456,300. The 2018 value was $5,344,400. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Hirsch, can you give some insight to their thinking on this? I mean, this is a huge decrease. I mean,
And Mr. President, Commissioner Frederick, their valuation was based entirely on their cost approach, or not their cost approach, excuse me, their income approach, and the cap rate they felt was necessary for this property. In doing so, I mean, their vacancy's really high out there, so their income is what it is. Much of the building isn't finished, which is why we reduced the value before. And in calculating the income approach the way they did, it's, you know, essentially saying there's value in that part of the building that's being leased, and they're giving no value to the rest of it. Through our cost approach, we've recognized that some depreciation, some obsolescence on that part that's not finished, and that there is some value to that. And of course, you know, if truly honestly that's all that property is worth, and you know they couldn't get more than this on the open market, well, the highest and best use is maybe to return it to a vacant site, because the vacant lots are selling for more than what their request is on a per square foot basis anyway.
there's just the concrete alone is 3 times what they probably have on here for land value. Parking lot.
Wouldn't argue that with you. I don't have that figure, but there's a substantial amount of concrete out there.
There's more than $100,000 of concrete there.
That's probably 300, 300.
So,
I mean, now I understand their thinking. It's just that, I mean, that isn't the market value. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't. If they tried to sell it, I don't think they would sell it for that.
again, the recommendation is $3,456,300. That would be a reduction from $5,344,400. And the owner's request was $867,592. So I'd look for a motion on this property.
I was just going to say, were Roars represented on the phone at all?
I don't think so. We have one representative from Halliburton. Mr. Kuntz, are you online?
Yes.
Okay, I want to place you, Mr. Kuntz, on mute again until we finish with this property, okay? Is there any representative from Roars online? Hearing that. So I'd look for a motion on this property.
Mr. President, I would move to change the value to match the 2020 valuation.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Trustum to change to the 2020 valuation.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Walla. Any further discussion? We'll go ahead and vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. That should be it for Roars, am I correct? Close all tabs, move in. All right. The Board of Equalization will proceed to equalize and correct the assessment roll according to North Dakota Century Code 57-11-03. The board may change the valuation, the assessment of any real property upon the roll by increasing or diminishing the assessed valuation thereof as shall be reasonable and just to render taxation uniform. This is according to North Dakota Century Code 57-11-03. We will proceed into this session, and any one person, their attorney or agent feeling aggrieved by anything in the assessed roll may apply to the board for the correction of alleged errors in listing or valuation of his real property. The board may correct the errors it deems just according to North Dakota Century Code 57-11-04. And Mr. Hirschfeld, the first property up here is Riley and Michelle Kuntz's property. Give us a summary and briefing statement, please.
Thank you, President Decker. Summarization briefing. Owner Riley and Michelle Kuntz, address 110 14th Street West. This property type is residential. Briefing statement. Former Dickinson City Appraiser Jeremy Farrar first inspected this property in 2016 as part of the residential revelation project. Property was assessed at $252,800 at that time and was decreased to $234,200 the following year based upon corrections to the property record card. The property then sold on 8/23 of 18 for $200,000, and the owners, in protest of their value, invited Mrs. Kirshner, Senior Property Appraiser, and Assessor Joe Hirschfield to personally inspect the property. This inspection occurred on April 5th of 2019, at which point the property record card was noted to be accurate. The decrease to the 2019 value was based upon an analysis of the neighborhood for changing market conditions, not due to any significant change to the property card itself. This year, the owner asked for a copy of their property record card and any other support the city had for the true and full value. The assessing office provided 10 adjusted comparables that indicate a value range between $195,500 and $226,300. This range of values bracket and support the true and full value as determined by the cost approach to value as $215,800. Staff recommendation. Assessing staff recommends no change, especially in light of the fact that the owners have requested a value 10% below their purchase price when medium home values in Dickinson are already 13% under value. On May 12th, the owners provided as support listings from their neighborhood whose asking prices have been decreasing. A column indicating the current assessed value has been added by the assessing department for reference.
Any questions for staff on their recommendation?
Mr. President,
Mrs. Trustum?
Mr. Hirschfield, do we know what years these property sales happen that you have listed under the staff recommendation?
Mr. President, Commissioner Trustum, these are active listings that were provided by the property owner.
Okay, so this is, and some of these are just listed in 2020 if I look back in his email. Is that correct?
That sounds correct.
Did you take those out?
I did not. There was one property we were struggling to locate in our system. The address maybe is different than what the MLS had. It was the only one I removed. And I placed these 4 properties in at their current list price as provided by the property owner.
So if a property is listed in 2020, it shouldn't be included in this analysis then?
It wouldn't have been included in our analysis. I believe it was the intent of the property owner to show that properties aren't selling for what they were listed at and that there's a decreasing market.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Hirschfeld? Mr. Kuntz? Hello, Mr. Kuntz. We're allowing you some time here to present your your data and your case on your property. You are on.
Thank you. I believe that you guys all have the information. I think I was talking with Joe, he should have given you some information that I supplied, and I'm really going to rest on that unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Kuntz?
Mr. President, I guess the question I have would be probably for Mr. Hirschfeld. In Mr. Kuntz's information he provides, he says that their property does not have 3 bedrooms. The basement bedroom is out of code and cannot legally be classified as a bedroom. Is that correct? And if so, is that does that show on his property card?
Mr. President, Commissioner Trustum, I would have to go and visit the property again to be doubly certain. We listed the property and found it to be accurate when we were out there. If we missed something like that, then we can certainly correct that. In the big scheme of things, that plays no part in the valuation. It's just a listing of the room count.
Any other questions for Mr. Kuntz or Mr. Hirschfeld? Thank you, Mr. Kuntz. There's no questions. I'll put you on mute to hear what the board has decided.
Okay.
Commissioners, Mr. Steiner.
Turn your mic on.
Your mic on. Turn your mic
Okay. I think we got enough information from Mr. Hirschfeld and looking at the comparable prices. I think the city is pretty close to where they are on this here. I would make a motion that we deny the abatement request.
Okay, so this is, the owner's request is to change his valuation from the 215,800 to 180,000. Am I correct in those values?
Correct.
Right. Okay, and the motion is to keep it at the 215,800. So we have a motion to deny and stay at 215,800.
Second.
So the motion is Commissioner Steiner, seconded by Commissioner Frederick. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Commissioner Frederick.
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum.
Aye.
Ms. Walla.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion to deny the request is passed. Mr. Kuntz, this will go forward to the county. Am I correct, Mr.? You can appeal to the county, Mr. Kuntz.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move on. And representative from Halliburton is still online? Okay. Thank you. I'll put you on mute again, and the city will present its case. Okay.
Thank you, President. The next summarization briefing is owner Halliburton, address 270 34th Street West. It's property type of commercial. Briefing statement, owners assigned has provided a broker's opinion of value for the property dated November 22nd, 2019. This opinion relies heavily on one 2018 sale from Williston and goes on to state that the 2018 Williston market is superior to the 2019 Dickinson market. The broker's opinion does not provide any data to support that statement. The Williston sale is one that Halliburton themselves purchased for $10 million and is very similar to the subject property. However, the Williams County Tax Director stated that in her opinion, that sale was below market and was part of the failed merger between Baker Hughes and Halliburton. She went on to state that the current true and full assessed value of the 10 million sale is just over 20 million and went unchallenged this year. Owner has also supplied the listing of their property in Minot. However, the property was listed for sale in March of 2020, well beyond the 2019 marketing period. Staff recommendation. The assessor did review the site for any functional obsolescence due to site size and site paving for excessive size upon owner's request, and has added obsolescence for surplus land and concrete paving. The result is a decrease in total value of 5.59%. Assessing staff recommends making no change to the current 2020 true and full value, which is a decrease of $1,184,600 from 2019.
Thank you, Mrs. Carlson. Halliburton's representative, you can present your case.
Okay, thank you. My name is Cynthia, and I'm a tax specialist for Halliburton. So my analysis entails taking a look at market bills as well as the cost approach. Based on my conversations with Mr. Kirkfield, his valuation primarily consisted of looking at the cost approach to value. So I reviewed the 2019 Dickinson commercial sales provided to me by the assessor's office, as well as some industrial warehouse sales comps from LoopNet that was provided to us from our broker. I was able to identify several Class C metal warehouses with a steel frame. These properties were built between 1980 and 2014, and they ranged in size up to 19,000 square feet and were sold in 2018 and 2019. I also found a property that should be in the packet that you guys have for a property that's listed for sale currently on Sim Street. I placed quite a bit of weight on this comp because the layout of the property is very similar to our subject. Each of the metal warehouse buildings has bay access for truck loading and also some finished office space. Hello?
Hello, this
Hello.
is Robert McCrae. Robert McCrae with EVI Dickinson.
Yep. Mr. McCrae, will you please put your phone on mute? We're discussing this with the representative from Halliburton.
I'm sorry. All right.
Okay, continue.
Okay, sorry about, well, I'm saying sorry, but, so I think I was talking about the Sim Street property. That property, as I was stating, I placed quite a bit of weight on, because of the layout of the property. It has some of the same amenities as our property, and it's currently listed for $81 a square foot. There's also another sales comp that we provided information on. It's actually a current listing of ours that's listed in the city of Minot. The property was placed on the market in March at $53 a square foot, and it is a 56,000 square foot property, multi-warehouse, same setup, metal warehousing. And so we also want to ask that you guys consider that property, even though it was listed after the assessment date, we still feel that it gives a good indication of what our properties are selling for. And again, that property is listed at $53 a square foot, and the marketing materials can be found in the evidence. It also should be stated that when we did speak to the city of Minot assessor, and they did consider giving us a reduced valuation. They reduced our valuation by 30% to approximately, I believe, somewhere around $110 a square foot. We also looked at the cost approach, since that's what the assessor is valuing our property on. I completed a similar approach using Marshall and Swift costs for metal industrial warehouses, metal shops, and metal office buildings. And I applied that to the square footage of our buildings to arrive at a depreciated value. What we could not get Mr. Hirschfeld to agree upon was applying any economic obsolescence to our buildings and improvements. We do believe that due to the fact that this property was vacated in December 2019 and the property had not been fully utilized since 2016, we felt that it was necessary to apply some economic obsolescence, since this is a special use property that was designed specifically for oilfield service companies. One other point that I'd like to make, one other point I'd like to make is, based on some conversations I had with several brokers in the area, I learned that construction costs are around $200 a square foot, and that means that our current valuation of $20 million, a potential buyer would pay 90 to 95% of new construction cost prices for our facility. So that just seems a little bit unreasonable based on the actual warehouse sales. What our property essentially is nothing more than, a truck shop with a warehouse and a metal office building. And being that it is such a large, there's a lot of square footage available, over 100,000 square feet. We know that it's going to be challenging for us to find an interested buyer. We'll more than likely have to discount our price because of these reasons. And so we just feel our opinion of value is more indicative of market value.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any additional information?
No, that's everything.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? I'll put you on mute, Kim, for Mr. Hirschfeld. Do you have any rebuttal to the case on the property value?
Mr. President, the information that she was referring to unfortunately came to us late on Thursday following the submission of the other material we sent you, so you don't have all of that in front of you. I did print it off and thought I stuck it in the folder here, but their material must not have. In going through that, this is a real difficult property to discuss at this period of time because we understand exactly what's going on with the oil industry right now. But to, try and remember to go back a year, and after this year, in essence, we're going back 2 years. The sales they're referring to are from 2019. However, we're going back to the 2019 value, which is 2018 sales. How do we consider all this information? And then, moving forward with the cost approach that she referenced, I'd really like to sit down with them and spend a little time discussing how they developed that. One of the things that jumped out at me, as I certainly intend to use this information for next year's valuation, but one of the things that jumped out at me was the shop building has 2 floors, and they only valued 1 floor of that because it's designed, built similar to a shop building. The Halliburton's not the most aesthetically pleasing building, and so when we developed our value to try and keep it lower, if you will, we built it as a shop with 1 floor and a 2nd floor mezzanine, office mezzanine. That was not picked up by the Halliburton rep. And so there's just some small things like that that maybe has led their valuation to be lower than what it should be, even using the numbers they are, which I'm not entirely certain that it came from Marshall & Swift, but not seeing the manual. How did they pull that out? Did they put the crane ways in? Just those kind of things that we haven't had that discussion yet. Well, sit down with them for next year's value. I certainly don't recommend the value they're asking for the 2020 valuation, but certainly for 2021, I'm assuming there's going to be some major decreases possibly, certainly in this sector. And
Well, we still have, as commission, we have 3 options, motion-wise. You can make no change, keep it at the true and full valuation recommended by the assessing department, change to the owner's request of $8,700,000, or option 3, change to a value of some other amount. So,
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner.
Mr. Hirschfeld, in your numbers, do you use any numbers from Marshall Swift, or is that just Halliburton that's using Marshall Swift?
Mr. President, Commissioner Steiner, Marshall & Swift, and I'm familiar with it. We don't have a copy in our office, but it is a well-renowned book that's used to do the cost approach. We use Vanguard's own cost manual, and in doing so, it's developed and fine-tuned specifically to the Dickinson marketplace.
I've used Marshall Swift in my business years and years. And in the insurance business, we got to get the replacement cost of it. Not having a lot of effect on what we're discussing today. But I've always had a hard time getting the value from Marshall Swift that they paid for their property. Insurance companies say, well, they paid $10 million. Marshall Swift says $6 million. You got $4 million gap there. So we always struggle with that. And eventually came to the agreement, basically in the industry, our industry, that Marshall Swift is really on the low side. I think from 20 million down to 8,700,000, I've been out of the business a few years. It looks like we're really on the low side. If what she's using is Marshall Swift 100%. So I would have a tough time this year doing an abatement down to 8,700,000. I would, if there's no more discussion, I would make a motion that we follow the 2020 true and full value and give them the 5.56 abatement.
The reduction,
5.59%.
the reduction in valuation.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any other discussion?
Would second that motion.
Any discussion?
Just, how does this compare to the Baker Hughes building right next door?
Their valuation is very similar to what the Halliburton.
But does it compare in square footage? And I mean, their office building is a lot different than Halliburton's office building.
Their office building is a lot different. It carries a lot more value than the Halliburton. But once you get beyond that, the shop buildings, a lot of the other buildings are very similar.
And just quick glancing, there's about 48, about 300, let's see, about 3 acres difference in land. Okay.
Any further comments, questions? I have a motion to make no change to the current true and full valuation with a second. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. There will be no change to the true and full valuation. Kim, I guess I missed your last name, but the valuations will be forwarded to the county for their Board of Equalization, and you can make an appeal to the county board.
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't get the beginning, so you're saying that the value will not change?
There is no change. The assessor, though, says he would like to sit down with you and discuss the next year's valuation in depth. So, going into next year. All right, thank you. Okay. The representative from EVI, are you on board?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, your name, please?
Robert McCray.
Robert McCray. Okay, Mr. McCray. The city's going to present its case, and then I'll have you on.
Okay.
Thank you, President Decker. Summarization briefing. The owner, EVI Dickinson LLC, address 617 Cottage Lane, 1294 Signal Butte. Property is a commercial assisted living known prior as Hawks Point. Briefing statement. This property was sold as a real estate owned property and was a distressed sale. Ownership has provided the assessing department with a bill of sale indicating a sale price $13,800,000 on June 30th of 17. Foreclosure documents indicate that the court had set a value estimate of $15,400,000. Both of these values are believed to be for the improvements only, and assessed value, as indicated above, must include the value of the land as well. This property has historically gone without value as an exempt property, which no longer applies. Due to the COVID-19 virus, the property was not physically inspected, and certain items were estimated based upon interviews of management and prior non-official visits to the property by the assessor. The staff recommendation. Assessing staff recommends no change, as true and full value as calculated through the cost approach to value is supported by the prior sale and by the value determined by the court in the amended foreclosure judgment. Staff plans to complete an interior inspection when COVID-19 protocols allow it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff on their briefing statement and staff recommendation? Mr. McCray, you can present your case.
Sure. This is a senior living facility. It's got a lot of assisted living, a lot of, very kind of resident patient care that's, it has always historically been very risky. In buying this property, we kind of added a second element of risk. I put a package together. I think you all have that. Okay. If you look at Exhibit A, it's a letter from the CFO of the company, and basically, if you look at the second sentence, it says the prior owner was Dickinson State University Foundation, who went through some severe legal, reputational issues, and was actually dissolved by the North Dakota Attorney General. And when we went and bought it, we saw an opportunity really to go in there and make some pretty good changes, put kind of our style in, and over a period of time, we thought this thing would probably, would probably be a good investment for us. We bought the property in June of 2017 for $13,800,000, and that's contained in Exhibit B. If you flip to that, and that $13,800,000 was for the entire going concern. It was for real estate as well as all the services that we offer there. And those services include meal services, housekeeping, nursing and medical, companion services, and really all the legal issues that we have with operating a senior facility. And just to show you how big a component, our services is, we spend $1,600,000 a year, just in the salaries of the people that offer all this. So if you look at kind of industry standards, you're going to see that usually about 40 to 60% of the value of a facility is allocated to the business enterprise or the services offered there, and the balance, is to the real estate. If you look at Exhibit C, it's a CBRE study, and basically it outlines the percentages for each level of care, whether it's assisted living or independent living, or memory care, So, it just tells you a big component of that $13,800,000 that we paid for it. A big component of it is for the business. And that's what we're asking for today. Is we believe that the real estate portion is about $9 million, which is about 65% of the purchase price. The next thing I kind of want to go over is the income for the property. Right now, year end 2019, we had $612,210 in NOI for the whole facility. When we bought that thing, we projected NOI of over $1 million, and it just hasn't performed. And it's just there's so many scars on that property, and we just totally, kind of overestimated what we thought we could do with it. We're forecasting net operating income in 2020 of $750,000. The way that these senior facilities are bought is through capitalization rates, and it's really totally derived from the market. And I've kind of put a cap rate study together for you in Exhibit E. And, you know, right now the prevailing cap rate is about 7.3% of the NOI for these kind of properties. And that's for the entire going concern. That's the services offered and the real estate. So, you know, if we took 750,000 and capped it at 7.3%, we're at about 10,274,000 for the entire going concern, you know, of the property. You know, our hope is to get it up to over $1 million, and then, you know, maybe, you know, it works out. Lastly, you know, we put together a Marshall and Swift cost approach. And what we came up with was, you know, a value of $4,848,000 for the main assisted living portion of the property. And we added that to what was already there, which was $5,256,300. And we came up with a value via the cost approach of a little over $10 million. But we really think the cost approach is probably the least reliable because it doesn't really encompass the economic obsolescence, you know, associated with the facility. You know, so you can back that into the Marshall and Swift, but it's very subjective. So, you know, and I'll just read, you know, in closing, this facility was purchased with many blemishes. The property was mismanaged, run down, and has a terrible reputation. The foundation of the property was dissolved. You know, we bought this property to correct the problems. We have come to realize, you know, it will take many years to accomplish this. And the economic issues that we're having are very different than what our competition is having there in the market. And, you know, we just request from the board, you know, that the value be reduced to $9 million for the property. And again, you know, Exhibit D will give you the year-end 2009 net operating income. The Exhibit E gives you a rundown of how we, you know, how we got to our cap rate. And then Exhibit E is the actual Marshall and Swift, you know, calculation that we had.
Mr. McCray, do you have any additional information you'd like to provide?
No, I think everything that's contained in that packet that I had for you, I think that's kind of our case.
I'll put forth to the commissioners if they have any questions for you. Commission, do you have any questions?
Okay.
Any questions for Mr. McCray? Mr. McCray, just to give you an update, a lot of them are going through your packet for looking at the information.
So, Mr. President, Mr. Hirschfield, in 2019, how was the $5,256,000 value?
Mr. President, Commissioner Frederick, that value was the land value as well as the value of the cottages.
I'm sorry, I can hardly make out the question there.
The question was about the 2019 value of $5,256,300, and the assessor gave the reason for the valuation because it was just on the property, the land itself, and the cottages.
Okay, yep. That's my understanding, yep.
Again, commissioners, we have three options with this property. We can keep it at the $14,609,600. We can change to the owner's request of $9 million, and we also have the ability to change the value to some other amount.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
am I correct in seeing in Marshall Swift that the bottom line on this, that they're saying the total cost is $4,848,000?
Yes, sir.
So that's even half lower than what you guys are requesting. And just for the.
No,
Go ahead.
well, there was already like 5,286,000 originally, so we're adding the 4,848,000 to the 5,286,000.
Just for the board, I want to use that as an example, what I said for the previous property about Marshall Swift being extremely low. And this just points that out.
Yeah, and I just think Marshall and Swift in this instance really is probably, again, does not capture the economic issues that we're having there, you know, so, you know, but anyway.
Mr. Hirschfeld, is there anything you want to revisit on this here with Mr. McCray?
Mr. President, Commissioner Steiner, this is a complex property with the issues with COVID and not being able to get into it, the time frame and trying to review their financials made it very difficult for us to come to an agreement. I'll continue to work with Mr. McCray, but you know, we followed the cost approach, and say what you will, I mean, it's the method that we use. It's been tested in the courts. We did the same thing for this property that we have for the other retirement homes and assisted living that we have in Dickinson. So we're equitable with those properties, and I just don't get any income data from that part of the market to be able to refute or support what he says, and I just kind of go back to relying on what we have, and that's our cost approach.
Yeah, but I've applied my income approach of, you know, I mean, I just think that the cost approach cannot capture the problems we're having with that property, you know. I mean, you could build the Taj Mahal there and put a cost approach on it, but economically, would it support that? There's just no way.
And I don't believe in giving 100% value to an income approach either. I've always said that over the years. It's not fair to small business owner or any other business owner outside of this type of institution or the apartment buildings or whatever. Based on their income, they cannot come in and say, I had a bad year, therefore my value should be this. You know, so we go down a different road completely when we come to these type of abatements, and you know, we struggle with them too. I mean, we're not all up on this here, but you know, I see where this is going to go. We would almost recommend that you go to the county and to the state board.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I comment on? Yeah, could I comment on that last statement?
Yeah.
You know, this isn't 1 year. You know, we bought a property with some serious reputational issues and a very low margin business, you know, that's just fraught with all kind of risk, you know. So this is not kind of a 1 year abatement that we're asking for. And I would tell the board this, that, you know, we're doing everything we can to make this thing work. And in a couple of years, if we want to revisit this income statement and it looks a heck of a lot better, we're more than happy to accept a much higher value and pay a lot more in tax. But right now, we're just in an economic hole that is just killing us. I mean, it's just the money that we're putting into this asset is, I mean, it's phenomenal, you know. And to have the taxes go up that much, you know, it's just kind of rubbing more salt in the wound. But again, I say, if we can get this thing going and get it on its feet, I mean, we're happy to work with Dickinson City and get this thing to where it's producing some good tax for you guys.
Mr. Hirschfeld, were you under one of the comments in here about basements and cottages? Were you aware of that?
Mr. President, Commissioners, I saw the statement. We did not go through the properties again. Jeremy Farrar did several years ago, did not notice any of those issues. It's in a part of town where, you know, if there was a large rain event, they may have had some moisture in there. You know, we have those issues across town. That plays into the value because of the location of how we value those cottages. I would like to myself go through that and see how it's affected these properties, but I have to rely on what my appraiser saw at the time and how the market's reacted, you know, since that valuation period.
Mr. Hirschfeld, you know, the net operating income with the cap rate, you know, they come up with $10,274,000. You know, they're requesting 9. I could see, you know, if we can work some numbers to where we can accept doing their cap rate of 10.274 and the 14 that we're at. You know, Grant, you didn't get a chance to go in and look at it, but you're looking for something tonight, aren't you?
Mr. President, Commissioner Steiner, regarding this property type and the cap rates, I have no data to support a cap rate. You know, we rely back on the apartments, and owners come in saying, oh, I need a 9 or a 10%, and the market's buying them at a 5.
Yeah. And they address that because they know that, you know, we're going to have 5 other people come up and say, okay, you gave this here to them, we want the same thing. And I think they're correct in saying that it's not the same as, you know, the other ones that they might want to come in and compare to. I think, you know, this property, you know, I just don't know if the 14 is fair, but I don't see numbers on either side.
Well, I look at the cap rate at 10 million, and then I look at the Marshall and Swift, which is real similar in that 10 million. That's two areas that were right in that 10 to 11 million range, you know.
Yeah, like I said, with the low of 10.2 or something like that.
When you add them together.
You know, I'd say something between the average of the 10 and the 14, but I don't like doing this type of business using averages with nothing to support it. The fact that I do know that they had serious water damage over there when it rains and so on, I don't know if that was correct or not. Have you had any water damages over there since a couple, 3 years ago, Mr. McCray?
You know, it's just been wet. So it's one time it was kind of an amenity that they were offering, and it's just, you know, they're just not doing that anymore. You know, I don't think it's wet to where there's mold or anything like that. You know.
That happens when you build in a swamp, and that's what it was.
Yeah. Yep.
So I guess I'm kind of looking for some help from the other part of the board if they see anything between the 10 and the 14. And, you know, if you say 14, I don't have any numbers to dispute it, but I'm very familiar with that property. Very familiar with it.
Your recommendation, Mr. Steiner, would to be by basically looking in between the two, you're around the 12.5.
If I had to make a motion right now, with everything I see here, I'd make a recommendation that we put the number at 11.5, and Mr. Hirschfeld can meet with them for next year's numbers.
I'm pretty comfortable with that number. That's the exact number I had in my head, 11 to 11.5. So
Great men think alike.
or something.
Okay, so, Mr. Steiner, you want to put that motion forward?
Yes, I'd make that a motion that we, let's see here at the bottom line here.
We're using option 3 of motions to change the value to 11.
That's what I want to do. Mine doesn't open up for some reason, so.
Mr. Steiner's
there it
making a
is,
motion.
Please
to-
change the value to $11,500,000.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Steiner, change the value to $11,500,000.
Second.
With a second from Commissioner Frederick. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Wallop?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Your value of $11,500,000 will go forward to the County Board of Equalization, Mr. McCray.
Okay.
Okay?
I think that's a fair compromise.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McCray.
Thank you all.
Yep.
Appreciate you hearing this.
Yep.
All right.
Is there anyone on the line from Lamont Properties?
Yes, I'm
Okay, state your name, please.
Dylan Frudenthal.
Your last name again, Dylan
Frudenthal.
Rudenthal? Okay. City, please make their case.
Summarization briefing. The owner, Lamont Properties, 110 14th Street West, property type Hampton Inn. The briefing statement, owners are looking for a value more similar to that of the Town Place Suites. After reviewing the property record card for both hotels, it was noticed that both are classified as a grade 3 property. Differences in per square foot values are primarily due to economies of scale, as the Town Place is a larger building. It also has a larger total valuation of $3,069,600. The Hampton has superior amenities that also add value, such as the presence of a covered front entrance and a slightly larger pool. These are two of the additional items that add value, resulting in the difference per square foot valuation. Staff recommendation. Assessing staff recommends no change after having inspected the Hampton Inn and reviewing the property record card.
Okay, any questions for staff on their recommendation and their briefing statement? Mr. Frudenthal, you can present your case.
Okay. There should be a packet that you guys have. I hope that Mr. Hirschfeld gave that to you guys. Can you confirm?
Yes.
Yes, we do have it.
Okay. I apologize, no page numbers. I don't say I labeled it. The first page kind of goes through, it gives you the building square foot, parcel number, year built, and we want to focus on the Town Place because that's a direct competitor of ours. The second page is mostly what I want to focus on, gives the building value per square foot, and the property tax per square foot is how I broke it down. I broke it down with the comparables here, and just going by building per square foot, we're assessed at $40 a square foot, where the My Place, Town Place, La Quinta, everything there is mid-30s, and we're we should be around the Town Place, especially they're 3 years newer, which I think makes a difference. Also, the Town Place is a Marriott brand, not as nice as the Hilton. The Hilton with the Hampton there is just kind of a standard hotel with the amenities that don't. The Town Place has way more amenities, and with the with the year built over with 3 years newer. And Joe, I know he mentioned that the pool is a little bit bigger. It's got the thing out front, and I know the meeting space, I believe the Town Place has a little bit bigger meeting room. But just breaking down the building value per square foot, when we're at 40, everything else here is at mid-30s. That's kind of my main argument, to knock us down to the $2,345,000 is what I'm wanting to recommend, which puts us at $1.93 million for the building itself, and the land unchanged at $415,000. It gives about a $378,500 difference there, just to put us at the same place as the Town Place there, building value per square foot.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Frudenthal?
Mr. Hirschfeld, do we have a room count difference? I mean, from my understanding, the Town Place is a extended stay, so they all have kitchenettes in them, compared to the Hampton, which is just a regular hotel.
I believe that's correct.
Mr. Frudenthal, did you hear the question?
Can you repeat, please?
The question, well, the question wasn't posed to you, it was posed to the assessor. Commissioner Frederick posed a question that the Town Place was extended stay while the Hampton was strictly single room, right? Basically,
Correct.
Overnight stay.
Yep, correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. President.
So, do we give a different value to that then? I mean, I understand that the portico is nice, but I mean, what does that really add to the value?
Our cost approach, it's adds to the cost to construct that building, so it's something that's picked up. How much it adds to your room rates, I can tell you that specifically. When we talk about an extended stay, you have the kitchenettes, but the appliances, the refrigerators, all of that's a cost to those, but they're considered personal property, and it's not an item that we pick up as a cost.
Mr. Fruenthal,
Yep.
would your ADR be comparable to the town place or higher?
Comparable. Well, that is our direct competitor, and that's all I'm really asking is per square foot there be compared to the town place. Even though town place is 3 years newer and they're technically a nicer brand, I'm willing to compromise with just being evenly assessed with them right now.
At 35 instead of 40? Is that what it is?
You're requesting 35 square foot opposed to 40, right?
Yep. I believe it's 34, if I'm not mistaken. I think my place is at 35.
Yeah, 34, you're right.
Yep.
Mr. President, if I may, in our valuation, the big difference, and do with it as you will, is in that economies of scale. There's almost a $3 a square foot difference in our cost to rebuild the town places as the Hampton, and that's when you start looking at it on a per square foot basis, as Mr. Frudenthal is where you're getting some of that separation. Is just in the sheer size of the building. I think it's 10 foot longer, so you've got 20 feet linear feet of concrete, and you multiply that by 3 floors. Well, that doesn't add a lot of cost, but it does add a lot of space to the property, and that's where the big difference is in this.
Any other questions for either Mr. Hirschfeld or Mr. Frudenthal? Mr. Frudenthal, do you have any additional information that you'd like to present?
No additional information, no.
Do you have any additional questions for the representative from the Hampton or Mr. Hirschfeld? If there's no additional questions or comments, I just have one comment. I don't feel that he's completely out of line. I think there are some obvious differences between the long-term
I mean, for me, looking at it, the sheer size, it's almost 20,000 square feet bigger, and we're $300,000 difference in valuation. From $3,069,000 to $2,713,000. I mean, 20,000 square feet is more than $300,000.
That certainly is, but it's some of the small things that don't jump out at you. I went through the Hampton Inn with the property manager, found the card to be accurate. I put the two cards side by side. They're both a grade 3 property, so their base cost is exactly the same. And so then the differences for certain amenities, and so the question is, if there isn't enough separation in the value, it's not because the Hampton's inaccurate. It's maybe I need to go back through the town place, and maybe we need to add more value to it. And that's not something that I did that day.
They'll be happy to listen to this.
to hear that. I guess I'd look for a recommendation. Again, we have 3 options here. We can make no change, which is recommended by staff, change the value to the owner's request of $2,345,000, or change the value to some other amount.
I'd make a motion to change the value to 2.5 million.
Okay, we have a motion to change the value to 2.5 million
Second.
with a second.
That makes the cost per square foot a little more, close. I mean, not even, but
Right.
close.
Okay. So the recommendation, the motion is to change the value to 2,500,000 with a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Frutenthal, your valuation of 2.5 million, 2,500,000 will go forward to the County Board of Equalization. If you feel that you need to have further discussion with that, you can take it up with them.
Okay, thank you very much,
Yep.
guys. Appreciate the time.
Yep, thank you.
Stay healthy. Yep.
And the last item here is FW Townhomes LLC. And that is there a representative online from FW Townhomes LLC? Anyone from FW Townhomes LLC? What was the timeline on that? Am I jumping? They have 6:55, so they should have been on.
What is this?
It is a shop.
They are shop buildings. They're divided and rented out. There's 2 buildings over there. At the corner of, was it 4th and 26th? We got 7 units, I believe, in there, 4 in one building, 3 in the other.
So they're all, except for one's vacant.
They may have.
Okay, go ahead and the city present their briefing statement.
Okay, the summarization briefing, the owner, FW Townhomes LLC, address 366 26th Street East. Property type is commercial rented metal buildings. Briefing statement, property increase was due to construction of a new office in Unit 200. The value was estimated from plans and the certificate of occupancy as assessed was not provided. Initial contact with owners resulted in request for change to the above value based upon changing market conditions in the oil industry and COVID-19 virus. The owner was informed of the 2019 market, which showed strength for this classification of property. Ownership supplied a current occupancy list, estimating net operating income at 40% vacancy and 11% cap rate as support for the same above value. The assessing department has no other income data for this class of property, but is concerned about the unsupported cap rate, which is much higher than other classes of property within Dickinson support. Staff recommendation. Assessing staff recommends no change, instead expecting to make significant changes to this entire class of properties for 2021.
Okay, any questions for staff on this item? I tend to agree with your last statement, that there will be significant changes across the board in a lot of these classes.
Well,
Unless oil goes
Not only
back
that,
above 50.
I noticed on their supporting material here, 3 of the 7 units are vacant. This is going to be a big problem if things don't change, and somewhere along the line, somebody somewhere has got to figure this out to help the city along, the cities along. Because at what point do you say, yeah, we understand you got vacant units, so let's adjust that, or your income is down, so let's adjust that. But yet they built these buildings, they came in and the city built streets to them, they put infrastructure to them, and that's how you got your taxes, you know, based on costs and so on. So, you know, I've mentioned this, that I just struggle adjusting some of these here when the cost has been put out there by the citizens of Dickinson. They paid for it. And now when things turn down, I can understand that, you know, they're looking at ways to reduce their expenses, but the expense of who is You know, we reduce the expenses to things just based on vacancy and income and so on. That means every other property owner in town here has to say, well, okay, I'm okay with mine going up to help these guys lower theirs. You know, I don't think we're that far apart on a lot of this stuff. Definitely not residential homes. I think we're right on residential homes. In fact, you look at the ones I mentioned last time, the ones that are for sale for 400,000, we have assessed at 250, 260. You know, we don't get phone calls from those people. But, you know, if maybe that was all in line with what they're selling them for, a lot of this here, we wouldn't have this problem. But we know how that goes, and we know that that's the way it works, that the asking price is normally a lot higher than what we have them assessed at. But in this type of property and everything, we're going to need some help from somebody. To figure this
Well,
out.
and that's why, I mean, this is off on a tangent, but that's why it's gonna be key who we bring in as a city administrator. When we're going to the legislature next year, that is going to be a huge task ahead. So, to your point of providing us some relief, especially out here, because we're getting a triple whammy right now. So, but, you know, back to the task at hand, doesn't seem like anybody's called in.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
What is a normal cap rate for a business like this? I mean, these are metal buildings. We've got them all over, and we're going to have a lot more of them. So, I mean, a lot of empty ones.
And I don't get the information on those, although in the Halliburton packet that came in late, I haven't had a chance to review. There's a very similar property, this one here that they're using that's listed, that's 100% occupied. I don't know what the rents are, but it would be real interesting to see what the cap rate would come back.
What's the industry?
Don't have that data on those, because as soon as you start getting the information from when we had the downturn, then it shifted and they started filling back up again. And so there's never good solid information on that. The best I have is apartments, which is 5.5%, which is 2 or 3 points better than.
Well,
There's got to be something out.
I could tell you, 11's unrealistic. I mean, there's nobody putting up stuff like this expecting 11% return. It's not happening. That's pretty high. But is 8 that number? Is 7?
Very good questions.
Well, we just approved one in
It's nursing homes,
we just approved one in planning and zoning, or you guys approved it. Over there, their land's now for sale. They're not gonna build it. There's no market for it, Keith Lee's land. That land's up for sale now. We approved for them to build those rentable units. The land's for sale now. They're not gonna build any more of these units, not in this environment.
And those were more specialty hobby type things. This is almost near industrial. I mean, it's heavy
Right.
commercial. You know, you're going to need tenants that need big shop space, and it's super high. And you know, to Mr. Steiner's comments, you know, we build streets and sewer and water. A lot of these situations we didn't. The developer did. You know, and then, you know, they sold a lot to somebody and they built the building. You know, obviously we took all that over. We got to still pay, you know, maintain it and stuff, but. I mean, this is, with this market right now, I mean, I would like to know what an appraiser would say the cap rate is in a steel building like this. I'd be very curious. I know it's not 11, so.
You know, you touched on the contractor building the roads and everything in there and so on, but, you know, we're just gonna stick $1 million into a road out west that the contractor built, and we're gonna end up getting $1 million from the property tax payers to pay for that road.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there a motion on this?
There is not. And there's no call in either, so.
I move we deny the abatement.
Okay, we have a motion to deny the change in valuation and keep it, the recommendation is $2,754,700. That would be the motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Steiner with a second by Commissioner Frederick.
Just have a couple more comments.
Okay.
So what is the obsolescence rate when you have buildings like this that sit empty for years? I mean, it's different if it sits empty for 6 months or a year, but some of these buildings have been sitting empty for years.
That depends. I want to pull one in particular. I mean, the Halliburton fits this, as does the grocery store North Cashwise, that family fare.
The old family fare. Yeah.
In my conversations with them, you know, they broached the subject about value, and I'm like, well, what is your intent? Are you going to sell the property? Is it listed for sale? No, we're going to hold it till Dickinson gets big enough, and then we'll move back into it. And so if you're holding that property, you know, it's hard to put an added obsolescence on that. If it's out there on the market, you know, actively being marketed and properties aren't selling, and this class of property is going to fit into that here in the next few years if things don't come back, then you have to start thinking about putting heavy economic obsolescence in, as we did to hotels, where we've got 80% economic obsolescence on those right now.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we're going to run into these situations a lot here in the future that, I mean, we've had buildings now that are fairly new that have never had a tenant. I mean, if they have them, I mean, if they're marketing them to lease and they never get a tenant, what's the value of it?
Well,
Obviously, they're not renting it, they're not going to sell it. There's nobody going to buy it, so.
and that's where, you know, a little more data would be nice, because when they're reporting 40% vacancy, and 2 blocks away, there's one very similar to it who's 100% occupied. So are they asking rents too high and they can't get filled up because of that reason?
Are they comparable? That's the next question.
They're very comparable. I mean, renting to the same type of businesses. They're both oil field service, predominantly.
There could be no more customers to rent to. Even though you're asking, if everybody's full or everybody's leaving town.
Well, in the current markets,
Yeah.
for certain, but, you know, if we go back 18 months, if they're sitting 40% vacant 18 months ago and everybody else is
Right.
85, 90, 100%, then it lets you know that there's something in the management to it that is affecting this. Maybe different management would have a different vacancy.
Any further comments? We have a motion, and if that was by Commissioner Steiner, a second by Commissioner Frick. So if there are no more comments, we'll go ahead and vote on this property. Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Mr. Frederick.
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum.
Aye.
Ms. Walla.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries to deny change in valuation. Move on to item 7, no reductions after the session of the board. After the adjournment of the board each year, neither the governing body of the city nor the city board of equalization shall change or alter any assessment. Neither shall the governing body of the board of equalization reduce or abate or authorize the reduction, abatement, or return of any taxes levied upon such assessments for any cause except for the property assessed, but was not subject to taxation at that time when the assessment was made. And this is according to North Dakota Century Code 57-1106. We will move on to 8, which is the exemption applications. And we will consider the applications to be filed for exemption. We have a list, commissioners. Have you reviewed the list? And do you have any questions on the list? Mr. Hirschfeld or Mrs. Carlson, do you need to provide us with any additional information about the list?
Mr. President, Commissioners, I have nothing to add to that unless you've got questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld on the real estate exemption list? Not, we need a motion required to approve the exemptions.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Trustum moves to approve the exemption list
Second.
with a second from Commissioner Walla. Any further discussion about the exemption list? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries on the exemption list. This brings the end of our Board of Equalization. We look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.